In today's world, conflict often falls upon similar axioms. The warring states and feuding empires of the past are gone. Peasantry and knights no longer clash at the behest of their ruling class. A modern war is a people's war, and with that comes ambiguity. Might can no longer be said to make right, as it so often did in antiquity. Who are the skibidi toilets, and who are the cameramen? Both of these groups seem to have coexisted with humanity before entering conflict. Before the cameraman's introduction, the skibidi's war seems centered on humanity. Season 1 shows isolated attacks on humans, and a human military rising against it. The only non-pov death shown is of a man getting trampled, in what is presumably a skibidi protest. Immediately following that is a heavily implied terrorist attack on a restaurant. Are the skibidis oppressed by humanity? In contrast is the episode immediately following, where a skibidi DJ plays for a crowd of humans. The real-world parallels go without saying. At the outset of the series, the skibidis are obviously set up as an oppressed class, and while some lash out, as we will see later in the series, there are many innocents as well. The cameramen, in contrast, are established as a military force from the outset. They seem to revel in violence, acting as a pseudo-military force. One could confuse them for some sort of armed gang. If not, later they were shown to have advanced technology. Their first clash is ordinary, a march meeting a march before the POV cameraman is ambushed. But right after this, in episode 9, we are treated to a horrifying sight. The POV cameraman, unprovoked, murders two skibidis before defacing a memorial monument. Even more confusingly, skibidis seem to have their own police force. Humans remain seen in the background though, unaffected by the conflict. Is this occupied territory, or some sort of skibidi ghetto? Episode 10 is what truly demonstrates the power dynamic at play, though. Skibidis are shown to have a religion, and houses of worship, and one such service is interrupted by a ruthless gang of cameramen. The skibidis, sans their priest, are terrified. They barely manage to flee as their priest sacrifices himself. There is no hint of malice in them, no attempt to fight. It can only be interpreted as a slaughter on the hands of the cameramen. This act of unprompted violence seems to have been a turning point, a call to war for Skibidikind. Isolated incidents, random murders and vandalism have turned into mass attacks. Gordon and Barney, friends of Skibidikind, get crushed underfoot. Was this because they were cameraman sympathizers? One cannot say, but from here on, humanity does not appear again. What is left is only further escalations of force by both sides. But there is a lot to glean from how either faction conducts itself in this skibidi war. The skibidis, for the most part, are guerrillas, disorganized, fighting in loose groups. But cameramen only operate more and more like a traditional military. Both groups show self-preservation, but only one shows fear, and only one seems to take joy in the suffering of the other. Episode 21 is indicative of this shift in the series. The cameramen seem to be trying to extract information out of a captured skibidi. When he isn't cooperative, they immediately execute him without hesitation. The cameramen have demonstrated, once again, that they have no moral boundary. This does not seem to be a conventional war. Eradication of Skibidikind is their goal, and the technological gap is vast. This is where the most interesting development in the Skibidiverse thus far occurs. The cameramen are not the only one of their kind. We are introduced to speakermen. They surpass even the strongest cameramen in both physique and technology. They eradicate a horde of skibidis before sitting on a desiccated corpse, like a chair. The guerrilla warfare analogs only grow from here. Skibidis are shown using dangerous, untested technology. They harvest from their fallen foes in a way not dissimilar from the cameramen. Slowly, they are becoming their own oppressor. They attach control devices, and forcefully take over their opposition, a both literal and symbolic representation of the oppressor-oppressee dynamic. The televisionman, introduced in episode 39, only further this narrative. Through unknown technology, They seem to enrapture the skibidis in fear. They are powerless against it. But it seems that the cameramen are not immune either. Pluv characters are shown putting on a lens specifically to counteract the effect. This power grows from fear-inducing to annihilating. The strongest televisionman seems to be able to induce death. That nobody is immune to this power is interesting. It could represent the raw power of propaganda that affects all sides within a war. Or perhaps it is some immutable truth that as one side conquers, so does the other. An immutable dance that causes evolution, and is as present in conflict as it is in nature. Having developed their own shielding technology, the skibidis are now undeterred. In the humorous episode 43, the televisionmen immediately vanish upon being powerless. I theorized earlier that they perhaps represented outside powers. In any modern war, either side is inevitably backed by other factions, whether that is for solidarity, a common enemy, or some unscrupulous objective varies. This support can be fickle, but the televisionman's is not, seemingly retreating only to innovate, combining their technology with the speakerman's. The imbalance of power is laid most bare here. The skibidi can only react constantly jockeying to counteract their foes' latest innovations. But the object heads have power, money, and seemingly, authority. The skibidis can only muster up a captured speaker head, puppeting it as if a cruel effigy. The war, at this point, seems to be dragging on. The lush cityscapes of the early episodes are now, as of season 15, giving way to apocalyptic environs. There is little left to discuss for the remaining seasons, only more and more violence. What left is there to be said? Any justification that the skibidis might have had for rebellion is long gone. That is the ultimate tragedy. In skibidi toilet as in real life, war makes no victors, only losers. But there is depth, nuance in skibidi toilet's depiction of struggle, even if it only ends up becoming a glorification of violence in the end. The symbology of oppressors and oppressed are cleverly mixed throughout the show. Cameramen start off as gangs. You could imagine them as extremists on the fringe, attacking the skibidi population because of the crimes of a few. But these attacks only serve to radicalize more skibidis. If there was a way to break the cycle of violence, it perhaps lied in the third party, the humans, who were all too complacent with the growing struggle. Could they have mediated, held the cameramen accountable for their crimes? Or perhaps the television heads, with their superior technology, perhaps they could have forced a ceasefire. But maybe the true tragedy was that these groups were never going to get along. The hatred seems primal. Cameramen barely treat their enemies as humans, executing them summarily. They use skibidi corpses as chairs. But are the toilets not just as reprehensible? They brainwash their own people, using them to perpetuate an endless war. They brainwash their enemies, forcing them to slaughter their own against their will. Can one really assign right or wrong to either side here? Regardless, the emotional depth and nuance of skibidi toilet is clear. Whatever you might say about its presentation, the story and symbolism is sublime. The creator went above and beyond to create an intelligent, yet still humorous series. Bite-sized morsels of suspense and action, and the endearing characters only draw you further into the conflict. From the lovable titans, to the most heinous skibidi, it is a people's war, and the people caught in the middle are who you root for the most. Regardless of side, skibidi toilet will assuredly go down in history as one of the greatest memes of all time. And yes, for the record, I do have a skibidi toilet tattoo. And no, you may not see it. It is for my osseous eyes only. And even then, they will have to prove themselves a true skibidi pill toilet soul. Nothing personal, friend.